Ever get that feeling like you stumbled onto something totally unique, something that's forging its own path?
Yeah, that's the vibe I got with The Late Show, and that's exactly why we're doing this deep dive today.
I agree. I mean, when I first looked at the materials, it was like, wow, where do we even begin? We've got descriptions straight from Leia herself, plus conversations with her dad, Nissim. There's stuff on entrepreneurship and even some historical stuff sprinkled in.
It's a lot, right? But that's what makes this so fascinating. We're going to try to break down what The Late Show is all about, what makes it tick, and why you might find it interesting too.
Definitely. I think a good place to start might be that about page you mentioned. It gives us some initial clues, right?
Totally. I mean, right off the bat, Liet calls it My Journey to Infinity, which is a pretty bold statement, don't you think?
It is. It suggests this isn't just a finished product we're looking at. It's something that's still evolving. And the About page even goes on to say that we, the listeners, are an essential part of the story. Right. It's like she's inviting us to be a part of this journey, not just passive observers. And then she starts listing all these different areas she covers: history, music, science, entrepreneurship, business, art, food, you name it.
Plus, personal stories. It's like she's weaving together all these different threads into something bigger. I think the fact that her father is a storyteller and architect is really significant here. It's like she's inherited that gift for weaving narratives, but instead of buildings, she's constructing something new entirely.
Yeah, and if you look at the list of stories and podcasts, it's clear just how diverse her topics are. There's stuff on cultures, Israeli culture, music, food, the arts, entrepreneurship, even current and historical events. It's all over the place.
But what's really interesting to me is how it's all presented. It's not just a random collection of content. Lyot publishes new episodes on weekends and evenings, and often they're grouped together in these sets focused on a particular theme. It's almost like a performance that unfolds over time.
I know what you mean. She even talks about how the whole newsletter flows together musically, which is a pretty unique way to think about a newsletter.
Yeah, it really emphasizes this idea of an ongoing narrative, something you engage with over time, not just consume in one sitting.
So all of this happens on a platform called Substack. Have you heard of it?
Of course, Substack has become really popular. It's where a lot of creators are sharing their work directly with their audiences, whether it's writing podcasts or anything in between.
Right. And one of the things that makes Substack so unique is that it allows creators to offer paid subscriptions. So you can subscribe to The Liat Show for free to get a taste, but if you want to support Liat more directly and get access to more content, you can opt for a paid subscription.
It's a great model. It gives creators a lot of freedom and control and allows them to build a direct relationship with their audience.
Exactly. Speaking of creative work and supporting creators, there's this really interesting conversation between Liat and Nissim called From Transit Camps to Triumph, where she admits to being a bit hesitant to share some of her big ideas with him.
Yeah, she was worried he'd think her ideas were like crazy, foolish, or ridiculous.
Which I think is something a lot of people, especially entrepreneurs, can relate to,
Hmm.
right? Putting yourself out there with an idea that's completely new and different can be pretty intimidating.
Absolutely. It's like stepping outside of what's familiar and comfortable and into the unknown.
So what was this idea that Leah was so hesitant to share? She wanted to build an entire education system based on the entertainment industry, basically the compulsory education system of the future, and she wanted it to be integrated into social media platforms.
It's ambitious, to say the least. When you read Neeson's reaction, which is literally just, what? You can totally tell he was taken aback. It's not every day your daughter tells you she wants to revolutionize education.
Well, exactly. It's a pretty radical concept. And it's not just about using social media as a tool. Leah envisions these online classes she calls sessions that are specifically designed for how people interact and consume content on social media.
Right. And she talks about dynamic hybrid classes with live streaming and on-demand participation. It's really thinking outside the traditional classroom model.
And she actually makes this great comparison to explaining Facebook 20 years ago, saying it probably sounded pretty crazy back then, too.
Which is a really good point. What we consider normal today was once completely unimaginable. And it's probably true that a lot of groundbreaking ideas sound crazy at first.
That's why it's so important to have people who are willing to challenge the status quo, right? People like Liat who aren't afraid to think big and push boundaries.
Absolutely. Now, I want to go back to the conversations between Liat and Nissim for a second. Did you notice the dynamic there? It's quite unique.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's not like a formal interview or anything. It's very relaxed and conversational, almost like you're eavesdropping on a chat between a father and daughter.
Exactly. Nissim even welcomes Liat to class at one point, which is just so endearing. And they weave in these personal anecdotes and jokes alongside these in-depth discussions about history and architecture.
It's a really great mix. Like when Neeson brings up Liet's Instagram stories and all the food photos she posts.
Oh, yeah, that was funny. And then he says, I wish we could download food. It's these little moments that make the conversation so relatable.
And it's not just lighthearted banter either.
Hmm.
Neeson's background as an architect really shines through. He brings a lot of knowledge and a unique perspective to the discussions.
And what's great is that Leah isn't just there to interview him. She actively engages, asks thought-provoking questions, and offers her own insights. It's a true dialogue.
A dialogue that spans generations, too. You have Neeson's wisdom and experience from his lifetime in architecture, and then Liet's fresh perspective and her vision for the future. It's really cool to see those two perspectives interacting.
It makes you realize that learning and growth can happen at any age. It's never too late to be inspired by new ideas and to share your own experiences with others.
Speaking of sharing, what do you think we can glean about Liet and Neeson's relationship just from these snippets of conversation?
Well, one thing's for sure, they have a very close and supportive relationship. Even though Liat was initially hesitant to share her more out there ideas with Neeson, she clearly feels comfortable enough with him to be completely open and honest.
And Neeson seems genuinely interested in what she has to say, even if he doesn't always understand it right away.
Exactly. There's a lot of mutual respect there and a playful sense of humor that really comes through in their interactions. It's clear they have a strong bond.
I think it's also worth noting that even though Liet's ideas are sometimes unconventional, Neeson doesn't shut her down. He's open to hearing her out, and even seems to be inspired by her passion.
Which I think speaks to his character. He's willing to learn and grow alongside his daughter, even if it means venturing outside of his comfort zone.
Yeah, totally. Now, shifting gears a bit, why might someone want to support the Liat Show by becoming a founding or annual member?
Well, according to the About page and the focused call to action, it's about more than just accessing content. It's about supporting a unique talent and helping Liat unlock her full potential.
Right, there's this idea that you're not just a passive consumer, but an active participant in this journey. It's like you're investing in the future of the Liat Show and helping to shape what it becomes.
And the language used is really powerful. They talk about being part of a groundbreaking project and supporting someone who's creating things this world hasn't seen before. It's pretty enticing.
And Liat even makes these bold comparisons, like calling the Liat Show the late show but during the daytime, or the compulsory education school of the future.
It definitely makes you think. It's clear she has big ambitions and that she's not afraid to shake things up.
Exactly. And she makes a good point about supporting independent creators to prevent them from being exploited by big corporations. It's about giving power back to the artists and allowing them to create on their own terms.
Which is a really important message. So how can people actually support the Layette Show? What are the options?
Well, the easiest way is to subscribe on Substack.
Great.
There's a free option which gives you access to a lot of great content. But if you want to go a step further and give Liat more direct support, you can sign up for a paid subscription for $8 a month.
And there's also the Patreon option. You can become a patron for as little as $1 a month, which is a really accessible way to contribute.
And even if you can't contribute financially, you can still show your support by following The Liat Show on Substack, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube.
Right. Sharing the show with your friends, leaving ratings and reviews, all of that helps to spread the word.
And it's already reaching a pretty wide audience. Did you see that people from 86 countries and 34 U.S. states have tuned in? That's pretty impressive.
It is. It shows that there's a real appetite for the kind of unique and engaging content that Liat is creating.
So if you're interested in exploring more, you can simply search for The Liat Show or Liat Portal Podcast on Google or YouTube. You'll find a ton of episodes, discussions, and maybe even some exclusive content.
And you can find the podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, too. Don't forget to leave comments on Spotify if you have something to share.
Liat also mentioned something interesting for those of you who might be creators yourselves. She suggested searching Notebook LM Liat Portal Podcast or Notebook LM The Liat Show on Google to find out more about the tools and methods she might be using.
It sounds like she's pretty open about her process, which is really cool. She's inviting others to learn and grow alongside her.
Exactly. So to wrap things up, I think the big takeaway here is that The Liat Show isn't just a podcast or a newsletter. It's a living, breathing project that's constantly evolving. And as listeners, we have the opportunity to be a part of that evolution.
It's exciting to think about where it might go next. I feel like we've only just scratched the surface of what's possible. What do you think?
I agree. It definitely leaves me with a lot to ponder. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of The Liat Show. It's been a real pleasure.